Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the United States of a Movie podcast. We're the podcast that makes every Monday a fun day because every Monday we get together and we talk movies, but we talk movies with a purpose because we are the podcast that is trying to find one movie to define each state in the United States. And this week we are taking down State 49, Montana. This is getting very exciting as we approach the finish line. My name is Oli PTSD. I love movies. I have hosted movie shows. Movies are my passion. And I found two guys that love movies just as much as me, if not more. So let's first of all welcome them back to the show. Ryan Sandler, buddy, what are you up to? What's going on in your life?
I am 3 days into my PTSD. I've just come back from a fly fishing trip, and boy, is my fish caught. No, that's not it.
Nailed it.
Well, got it in one.
And as always, sitting right there in the middle of his very own video store in Hollywood, California, Will Hirsch, buddy, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be here. Great to be in my fire tower, which is not resistant to lightning at all. You'd think that would be the first thing they would prepare for.
Yeah, and making them out of metal and putting it on top of a hill as well. Genius idea.
And thanks for reminding me of the second movie, because I honestly forgot. I was like, fuck, what was the movie we watched?
Well, we watched three movies, and we watched three movies that were actually picked for us. Will, actually, why don't you do me a favor, and why don't you introduce our special guests?
Our guest today is one of my oldest friends, Kristen. She and I have watched many, many bad movies together. Our friendship goes back a long ways. We've met, as we were talking before the podcast, at Spanish Fly, but she is as much a movie fan as we are. And we got a lot of great stories of just the absolute trash that we've watched together.
So, Kristen, welcome to the show, Kristen. Welcome to come play with us.
Yes, thank you guys for having me. I'm a longtime listener, first-time caller, and my qualifications are, like Will said, I like movies and I live in Montana, and that's about it.
Yes, you are literally in Montana right now. Okay, we have a Montana expert.
It's the highest bar we've ever set.
So, as you may have picked up from the context clues, the state that we are taking down today is the state of Montana. And Kristen gave us three movies. Honestly, two of the movies that I was pretty sure were going to be on the list anyway. And then another movie that I'd never heard of. So we've got three movies. We've got a 90s action movie that was made in 2021, Those Who Wish Me Dead. A 1950s drama that was made in 1992, A River Runs Through It. And then a 2022 television show that is technically a movie that's on Netflix, but it does have a good subject matter with Mending the Line, which is, honestly, like I said, had never heard of the movie, but it's actually got a pretty banger cast. And I did enjoy it, and I probably will be defending it, but I will not be defending the lack of cinematography in this movie.
Yeah, it's. I had told you guys I realized that I had seen one other of this director's movies before. The first time I went to visit LA, this is like 7 or 8 years ago. I was just in LA and I was like, yeah, I want to go see a movie that so I just picked a random movie. It was a movie called Be Somebody. And I think it was this guy's directorial film. The plot is essentially, what if a Justin Bieber type like hid from his fans and tried to be a normal guy for a night? It's exceptionally bad, to the point to where it made this movie feel like Apocalypse Now. Well, like that's how bad that movie
let me just
keep
give
saying
you
that.
A slight description on this movie. So it's a 2016 romantic comedy film. Okay, but this is the bit that I think sort of boils it down. The film stars Vine blogger Matthew Espinoza. It's a guy from Vine.
Oh, I thought you were talking about this movie that we watched.
No.
I'm like, what? I mean, I guess the relationship between Brian Cox and Wes Studi is pretty fucking funny.
Yes.
The real world, won't they?
What the rom-com between those two?
So Mending the Line is a 2022 drama film. It came out on Netflix. It was up in the number 1 for a few days on Netflix. It stayed around in the top 10. But like Ryan is saying, while it does star a guy called Cinco Walls, who was on like the Friday Night Lights TV show, has done a number of television, has got into some movies as well, and he was very good. I'm gonna like him. He pretty much did what he did what he needed to do in this movie. But then filling out the cast, we had Brian Cox just killing it. Where's Studi? As soon as he turned up, I'm like, oh, look how, where's Studi? And then Patricia Heaton, and then even Irene Bedard, who I had not heard of until last week when we did Smoke Signals, and I'm like, wait, I know this actress, so it's almost like you planned it. This was great.
Who did she play in Smoke Signals?
And
she was the gal who was looking after the dad.
Okay, that's what. That's what I thought.
Like literally the only female person in the movie. No, I'm kidding.
To be fair, everyone had like really long, beautiful hair in that, so it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, this is true. But yeah, like this movie, it tells the story of. I mean, honestly, I was texting Will within the first 3 minutes. Actually, I was on the thread because I was like, gee, I sure hope nothing bad happens to this guy who.
Oh my god, like, everything about it.
Like, it's just like Hot Shots when they keep calling me dead meat.
Yeah. When they pan down and he's got like the photo of his family in the Humvee, you're just like, oh.
I know.
It ticks all the boxes. Like they go through all the characters. He's like, you're coming to the wedding, right? You're coming to the wedding. You're going to be in the wedding. They keep bringing that up. And then he's like, in my mind, I'm like, boy, I sure hope they don't have to go on one more assignment. And they do.
Isn't that like a Kong Skull Island thing where they're like, you know, we're done, we're completely done, and then someone decides like, oh, we'll just do one more mission. And
one more job.
Like, they get exploded.
They keep adding the things.
Oh, I couldn't believe, honestly, how many sort of movie rules they broke, or even just ticked off in the first 4 minutes, because it's
very
not
tropey.
just we're best friends. He's like, you're getting married. I am your best friend. Best friends don't dance. It is also the last day of deployment for everybody. Everyone's talking about going home. And then they're like, take one more mission. And this, as Ryan points out, pans down to this guy's family as a picture. And I'm like, well, this guy is dead meat. And guess what happens 90 seconds later? Dead.
In my mind, I'm like, dead. I wonder how he's going to get exploded. Like, it's just...
this movie, one of the negative things I'll say is there's no surprises. Like it's
painfully average.
Yeah, it will not like rock your world. It just, what really saves this movie is the performances are good. The cast is all pretty good. I don't think there was like a weak link in there.
Yeah,
it was
not just that, but I will say, as someone who has had his own mental health journeys and suffered panic attacks and things like that, based off trauma from when I was younger, I will say that this movie does a really, really good example. It really does jump on the whole idea of mental health. And as someone that knows a number of soldiers who have been in battle, this is a thing. This is a battle that they all continue to fight once they come home. So yeah, like what I say, like this movie, like, I mean, I wrote you guys, this movie doesn't have a cinematographer. It has a cameraman. I'm considering how beautiful Montana is. They barely took advantage of it. It's only got 3 locations: Brian Cox's house, the VA, and that one river that they go to every time.
And the bait shop.
Yeah, and the bait shop. Yeah. But at the
That's
same
a real
time,
place.
Yeah. but like Will is saying, it's like cast is great, and like I am saying, I think they did a really good job for what they're talking about. My interest, I guess, comes from Kristen. Is 1, where did you see this movie? 2, why did you pick this movie? You know, tell me about this movie and your relationship with it.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. It's a very like personal movie for me. The writer is my coworker's husband. And so I agree, it's kind of simple. The story is kind of simple, but I think the like deeply personal part of it comes from, I believe he wrote the movie as kind of like a love letter to his dad, who was like in war and suffered from PTSD. So like the intention and the feeling behind it, that's why it's so genuine. So it's all filmed here in Bozeman and Livingston and Paradise Valley, which is where the river shots mostly take place. That, you know, Angler's West Fly Shop is real. It's in Paradise Valley. You know, Wes Studi, he lives around here somewhere.
Really?
It's just like so familiar to me.
So you like watching the movie, go, there's my house right there.
Yeah, like I know that place. And then the whole connection in the end when you see all the veterans and the WQW is Warriors in Quiet Waters, which is a local nonprofit here that's what they do. They connect soldiers to fly fishing and other outdoor activities as like a method of therapy and healing.
See,
So
I said that
it's
to
like
Mrs. I was watching the movie last night, and when it gets to the end, I go, "Oh, I bet $1 million those are all real veterans, and this is a real thing."
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
so this is kind of like, it's what I mean. It's like, I was texting the guys like towards the end of the movie because Mrs. fell asleep, and I'm just watching it, but it was touching me, and I was like, going, "I'm going to be defending this movie. I'm going to be defending it." Like it hit me in the feels, like the acting, especially like Cinco Walls towards the end, when like they do a really, really, really good job of showing people who have trauma who don't want to face the trauma. And that's a very real thing. And it's a very real thing you see with a lot of people. And when they get backed into a corner, the way they explode, the way they react to certain things, the way they get triggered by stuff, it was nailing it. I have to be honest. And it's like, I was wondering as well, because so is there like, I'm sure there is, I mean, they're everywhere, but like, is there a VA place as well around where you live in that part of town?
I'm not sure. There might be. That VA is like, that was an old hospital that's since been torn down. So it wasn't filmed in a real VA, but there might be one around here. I actually don't know. So I
found like
certainly.
it starts in Afghanistan. Everything, like I said, we the most predictable deaths in the history of cinema. And then we land in Montana, and when we land in Montana, that's kind of like where we stay for the rest of the movie. And I kind of like, what I think is that I think it's interesting, like I said, that you've pointed out, oh no, this is all like real places, is that it did feel like that. It did feel like, oh, it's just being shot. Like, whereas, when we get into talking about A River Runs Through It, it's very much more cinematic. It's very much more sort of like trying to sort of like beautify everything. Whereas like, this movie is just very much kind of, just get it, just get it, just get it.
It's like the difference between like a really beautiful, like Ansel Adams style portrait versus a postcard you would get at the Montana airport.
Yeah.
It was just lacking that extra bit of that polish and, quality.
Yeah, and it's something, Will, you said it on the thread. It's like last night, it's not that hard to make something look cinematic.
Right. Yeah, it's something that a lot of low budget filmmakers, I don't know if they just don't know, if they're not aware, but like really when it comes to like making stuff look good, it's not hard to find good DPs. They're usually just a little more expensive than just getting your buddy who knows how to work a camera. But really what saves you a lot of times is the coloring of a movie. And that's a really underrated aspect. If you check out our film, Scare Us, it's not going to blow you away and be like, this is the most amazing horror movie ever, but it looks like a movie, and I guarantee you we shot on all the same cameras with same lenses that they used. And it all comes down to like how you color a film that can like really make a difference.
Sure.
So this is just one of those, to me, I'm like, okay, I think they were working on a shoestring budget. It probably all the money went to the cast. So in that aspect, I get it. But where I'll defend the movie again, compared to A River Runs Through It, is this movie moves at 1,000,000 miles an hour compared to that film.
Oh,
like at least this was paced like an actual movie.
Yeah,
like,
Will, it's also got a thing called plot in it.
Yes, things happen in it. What a radical idea.
And we were going to get to that. But honestly, I was watching the movie going, I even said to Miss, I said, honestly, if you'd taken the heart and the humanity of Mend the Line and chucked it inside the movie of A River Runs Through It, that would have been a way better movie.
Would have been, yeah, exactly.
but I was honestly as well quite distracted, and this is all Ryan's fault. Ryan, you described one of the actress, Perry Matfeld, as like basically not Jennifer Aniston. Like, it's like, I've got Jennifer Aniston at home, and the thing is, I didn't see it, and then suddenly, from certain angles, she had certain hair flips, her eyes and stuff. I was like, oh my God, no, it's not. Yes, it is Jennifer. No, it's not. It's so weird.
Down to her line readings were
Yes.
exactly like what she would like do. And from that point on, I'm like, I can't.
I think for me, it was
did she study Jennifer Aniston? Like, it's crazy.
It was the scene when he goes to the library to take out the books. I'm like, she's got that quirky kind of Jennifer Aniston cadence in her line delivery, and I was like, oh, cool.
I'm like with Will. It's like
and it's because we just watched Leprechaun.
Right.
Yeah, so that was in my mind.
I was waiting for the Leprechaun to show up in this.
But yeah, I mean, like, did you see that, Christian? It's like, honestly, from that point, because of Ryan doing that, it's all I saw for the rest of the movie was not quite Jennifer Aniston every time she was on screen.
Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get it now that I'm thinking about it. I just like, I didn't remember. I saw the premiere when it was here, like, a few years ago. And I didn't remember how, like, she's just so, like, mumbly and, like, kind of, like, annoyed to be there, I feel like.
Yeah.
I was like, what is going on here? But
She's
yeah,
got a great backstory too, though. Like, I think a lot of this movie it's not a bad movie, but it's definitely not a bad movie, and it doesn't look bad either. It just doesn't look like a professionally shot film. It seems very made for TV, very like Hallmarky almost, just a little too polished for how how rough and real the subject matter is. It just doesn't kind of.
The best moments of the movie were the slow motion fishing moments.
Yeah.
Like they'd get those slow motion moments with the fish coming out of the water, slow motion casting, and I'm like, hey, look at this. And then, but you're 2 minutes later, they're doing, okay, guys, the sun looks kind of nice, and the camera's there, but it's handheld and it's bouncing all over, or they're always on sticks, and I'm like, it's got the look, and it's very much something that people talk about online, but it's the look of a Netflix movie.
Yeah.
And
I believe those slow motion fish shots are like licensed from someone else
They
too.
had to have been.
Yeah.
Ironically,
They
From
had
Robert
to have been.
Redford.
Yeah. Yeah,
that
because
makes sense,
they
because
look too good.
It looks different.
Very stocky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
God, you are already killing it as a guest.
a lot of research on that one.
You're giving us all the tea, and I'm loving it. So to back up a little bit, so you got to go to the premiere.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it premiered in multiple places, but the Bozeman Film Society hosted a premiere here in town with a talk afterwards. And so I'm trying to remember, maybe the director was there, but definitely the writer and a guy from Warriors and Quiet Waters. And then I believe they used some anglers, local anglers who worked on movies before to actually catch the fish, and then they hold the fish, obviously keep them in tanks, because the actors can't be relied on to catch fish when they need them.
Can't count on
even though they were
anything.
trained, they got some training, and
I
some
like
of
the
them
idea
took
that
to it. But yeah, they have to have someone come in and gather all these fish so that they have them for the shots, because it's
That's
not
funny.
reliable.
I picture them like
think
fly
about-
fishing, and they lift up the reel, and it's just like a tennis ball.
Green screen fish.
Or like was it a Billy Mouth bass, like the animatronic ones? That's what I would use.
Damn it, Brian Cox! Stop bringing those to set. Yeah.
I think is like by the end of
Cool.
watching all these movies, I do really want to go fly fishing.
Yeah.
It does seem like it does fix all the problems in the world.
They do. They make it seem like it's so easy that you're constantly catching fish, but the reality of it is you're just standing in a river drinking beer. That's it.
Sounds pretty
Yeah,
good.
there's a lot of patience involved versus like when he first teaches him to fish, and like his second cast, he catches a fish.
I kept waiting for him to like.
How it works.
I kept waiting for him to like throw the entire fishing rod into the thing,
Yeah.
like we're hooking West Studi or something. Spice it up a
So
little
I
bit.
actually have a question. I don't know the answer to this, but it's like because you see them tying like the little various flies on the end, right?
Yep.
But is there a hook in there?
Yes.
Like because it seems really easy. Now I need to.
You actually. So
I've
the way
never
that
caught a fish in
the
my
way
life.
that works is, so we'll get into it with a river runs through. My dad was like, whenever he would get into something, he would get into it obsessively, and he was really into fly fishing, and he would tie his own flies, and each one was meticulously. I mean, he'd spend so much time on it, meticulously crafting each one of these to catch or to attract a lure, to attract a certain type of fish. And I mean, you could really go down this rabbit hole, but you basically start with a hook, and you have this whole apparatus, and you basically weave the string around constantly, and you're basically handcrafting what a fly would look like in order to attract the fish. It's insane. So each one of these flies could cost hundreds of dollars.
No way. See, I'm.
Whereas real flies are free. You can just
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
catch them, just put them at the end of your hook. I mean,
You would think fly fishing would
Free
mean you would
tip,
just
fly
catch
fisherman.
catch an actual fly out of the air and then
Yeah.
use that to catch the fish.
That's Daniel San style with chopsticks.
That's it. Yeah.
So
There you go.
So outside of that, so Kristen, like, all right, so you've been kind of like, you've been around this movie a lot. I mean, like, just get into just also when you actually talk, when you watched it, outside of like the familiarity of like, all right, this actually feels very much like my town or very much where I live. I mean, what else, like, about the movie did you enjoy? I mean, like, for me, genuinely, like I said, I was kind of caught up in the, oh man, great representation of trauma of various types, But like for you, what were you digging about the movie?
Yeah, I mean, I found it especially moving. It got me this time around. I cried a couple times.
Yeah, no, me too.
So I think it's like, yeah, it's really genuine and really an awesome story. I also am just kind of, I really like Cinco Walls. I first saw him in Teen Wolf,
Oh
which
wow.
is unironically one of my favorite shows, as lame as that sounds. So, I see him and I go, oh, I'll check that out. So it's just a fun, his performance is really, really good.
Oh yeah.
So I
No,
agree
he
with
did.
that.
He did a good job. Like credit where credit is due. Like that.
They all did. There was
Yeah.
not really a bad, like, again, there was really
Yeah.
nothing bad about this film, and it's just felt very cheap, I guess. And
Can you think of though what it was like to be Cinco Walls and like you're on set with Patricia Heaton and Brian Cox and Wes Studi? You know what I mean? It's like these are absolute like legends and sometimes titans, and they've been in some iconic. I mean, we've had Wes Studi on the show when we did North Carolina, where we were doing Last of the Mohicans. I mean, like he turns up on screen, and I'm like, holy shit, he's in this movie! Like it gave it so much gravitas, and honestly, Ryan, you were joking about it earlier, but the 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 relationship between him and Brian Cox was really fun. Their old man banter. It was like it was Grumpy Old Man 3.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pretty genuinely funny movie, and for the subject matter, there's some jokes in there that are like, that's really funny.
Yeah, I don't think Brian Cox was even acting in this. I think it was just him, crotchety old Brian Cox.
There was definitely one scene where he was just doing an English accent, like there was just for 45 seconds of pure. No, that's just Brian Cox right there. Hang on, he's a British Vietnam veteran from the 70s.
Of course.
Well, he was a former sheriff in Super Troopers, so really leaned into that. Yeah.
That's right. He's
the one time in the film you actually hear his actual accent.
He's been on the show as well. That's right. So I'm seeing here. So the film was produced in partnership with the U.S. Marine Corps, with their liaison office. So it helped them to get technical advisors, vehicles, equipment, Marines, and the opportunity to shoot at Camp Pendleton, which is like, why that opening. I could tell, like, it's cool. I was like, at the opening scene, I go, I bet they're going to say this is Afghanistan. But like, I'm just looking in the background. I go, that looks suspiciously like California.
I don't know. That could be Montana. There's parts of Montana like near Billings that are more plains like, and I was wondering. I was like, is that also in Montana somewhere?
Like that opening scene felt very real, as in the way they're acting, the way they're moving, the way they're operating, the terms that they're using, the way the tactics they were using, and everything else. I'm like, oh wow. But then at the same time, I'm watching this, and then I'm thinking about Black Hawk Down. I'm thinking about, just any war movie, really. It's just that
Transformers, Dark of the Moon, all the classics.
But you're right. I think it was almost too grounded for how it was shot. It wasn't as like. And I think that was intended. I don't think it was intended to be like this action-packed, blockbustery scene. I think it was supposed to feel very scary and real.
Yeah.
Instead of hyper-stylized.
It wasn't. I know what you mean, but like, I guess part of it, that opening scene, is I didn't really get the tension. There wasn't much tension.
No, I thought it was gonna be for, like we talked about, for how the tension was like building up. Something horrific is going to happen, and then it eventually does. You're just like, oh, all right. And the way it's filmed, you're like, you don't really know what happened. Like, did they all get blowed up? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's like, and the way it plays out. See, I mean, if here's, I'm going to Monday night quarterback this, but it's kind of like, I almost feel that if we just started in Montana with the trauma, and we had learnt the trauma as we went through in the flashbacks, instead of like those dreams where he's just seeing, he can't reach the gun, or the gun doesn't have bullets, kind of thing, like, which is a great representation of what's going on. But I just kind of feel like it revealed itself more.
Yeah,
and instead of it goes, hey guys, here's the trauma. Okay, here's the movie about trauma.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, I think that would have been just a better way to do it.
Yeah, you'd be more
That-
invested in the story, I think.
Yeah, I can see that working. But I'll say one thing about the dream sequences that I really liked, that a lot of movies, even some of the best movies, don't do, is I love that the dreams aren't literal. They're not
Yeah.
memories of what happened. They're
Right.
like his feeling on what happened kind of mixed with that, which I feel is much closer to like how it actually is. It always kind of bothers me a little bit whenever somebody has dreams of the past and they're all like literal memories where I'm like, that's just not how it works.
Like, you
They're
notice
So
how
I
flashbacks and
appreciated
dreams.
that.
yeah, no, actually, well,
Yeah.
me too, because it's one of the first things I noticed is that in that dream, like they're not wearing their combat gear. They're
Right.
not wearing their helmets. They haven't get their weapons. They don't have their radios or anything. They're just in fatigues.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
it's like it was much more of kind of like exactly like you're saying is instead of being overly literal, it's like a dream of why can't I move? They're right there.
Yeah.
I can't reach my gun. It's, you know, that dreams.
Yeah,
We've all had those
sure.
dreams where that I just need to grab it. Why can't I grab
Yeah.
this? And like I will
Mhm.
give like I said, that was like
For
that's on me.
me, it's like, why are my teeth falling out? Why is Freddy Krueger here? I mean,
Mhm.
so I can't really relate to that.
Why
but-
am I
Yeah,
directing?
why do I like
2004?
son-in-law? You know, all this stuff. You know, all these questions.
Yeah. That's between me and my therapist.
So, well, okay, and we've done it again, as we like to do in this movie, but never actually described fully what the plot is. But essentially what happens is that Cinco Walls' character, he's got PTSD. He really wants to get back. He wants to get back out there. He considers the Marines his family. He is obviously traumatized. We see it, him reacting to loud bangs. We see it when he's walking past trash and he's like, back of his mind, you can tell, is there an IED? And so Patricia Heaton kind of like realized it's all right, you're not doing well in this whole group therapy thing again, which felt to me like genuine. Those were real,
Yeah, that was great.
real veterans.
Mhm.
Because he called out the therapist for having absolutely no military experience, and even everyone else who is a veteran is like, yeah, get this fucking guy out of here.
Mm-hmm.
He was seen no combat, right?
Right, but so they basically team him up with Brian Cox, who, as we discover later, was also a recon Marine, but he was in Vietnam, and he's not doing so great himself, and he's also like it's never really fully explained like why he's just passing out, like he just has moments that I don't think that's related to his trauma. I think it might be some other reason, but essentially they don't want him fishing alone. But what they do is that they go out and they have this kind of like contentious bonding, which is like always the best kind when it comes to men, you know, like
Mhm.
The only kind.
yeah, they just got their
Yeah.
walls up, but
Yeah.
they go out and they go fishing, and it's just kind of like I will say, like I was saying, I never caught fish in my life, but there was a moment in the movie where they're talking about it's just like you lose yourself in it, and I once spent 8 hours fishing while camping on the side of a lake in Texas. Didn't like all I did was catch the sun, but I at one point I had just realized my brain had completely turned off. I'm just watching the ripples. I'm just casting the line. And it is one of the most relaxing things I've ever done in my life that I'm like, no joke, this movie makes me want to go, oh man, should I go to Montana, go fly fishing? Like, is there
Yes.
fly fishing?
For
I've
sure.
got someone to stay with now.
There you go.
But like, has anyone ever been fly fishing? Anybody done it?
I have. Yeah.
Okay, so because your dad, like you said, your dad went down the
Yeah.
rabbit hole. So where
And
have you fly fished?
Really, I think we would get up like super early, like 4 a.m. and drive 2 or 3 hours to Pennsylvania and just
Wow.
do that for the day. Yeah.
Did you ever actually catch a fish?
No, my dad had caught many fish, and then he'd like, if you would catch, you would always release, but if you caught like a really special fish, you could catch it and bring it somewhere and then have it mounted. And we had like this beautiful golden like rainbow trout that he'd caught. But you're right. It's like for me, like to do that with like an 8 or 9-year-old kid. I'm like, this is the most. I'm sitting in the car playing a Game Boy or something. I'm like, this is the most boring thing you could ever bring me to. But now watching these films, I have such a different appreciation for it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it is this like Zen-like peaceful experience. It's not so much about catching the fish. It's just that being out there and kind of like calming your mind.
Well, I will say so. You know, and again, so it's almost like we planned it again. But June, when we're recording this episode, June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, actually. And it's like it's something that has honestly it's been on my mind a lot this month, and I've been thinking a lot about my mental health. And it's like as I'm watching the movie, it's like when I was at my worst a couple of years ago, I was just burnt out. I had nothing else in my life. I was just either working or I was just with the family. I had no hobbies. I wasn't doing anything. I had nothing I did for fun or just for me. And as I'm watching this movie and like, you know, he takes up fishing, I realized, well, there is one thing that I did that I created just so I had something to do and it's something I was passionate about. It's this bloody podcast. This is my fly fishing. Is like,
Yeah.
this is, I just always wanted to do it. I love talking about movies. I love talking about movies with Ryan and Will. And so I'm kind of watching this and I go, all right, there's a lot of, like I said, you know, this movie isn't going to win any Oscars, but what it is doing is it's making me think about my mental health. It's hitting me in a space. It's making me think about these things, and it's also making me realize that, you know, this podcast is my fishing, and I wouldn't have seen this movie if it wasn't for the podcast. So there's some just a real nice symmetry that came together with this movie. I have to be honest.
Some good overlap. I like that.
Yeah. And I what I really appreciate about this movie is I like that at the end of it, it's not like, oh, you're cured, you know, you're good. Your mental health is perfect now. I like that it's
Yeah.
showing it's just more about the growth
The process.
and the process. So there's a couple things, whereas like the actual directing is probably pretty bland. You know, the camera work especially is kind of bland. There's a lot that they're doing a lot with a little, and they're avoiding a lot of mistakes that I see a lot of other like micro budget movies make. You know, it's not like they got Brian Cox for a day, shot him out, and then put him on the poster being like, we got him in here. Like a lot of like indie productions do that. So I love that, like the, you know, Wes Studi, Brian Cox, Patricia Heaton, they're like throughout the movie. They're not just there for 1 minute just to get their name and face on the poster. So there just a lot of little things about this movie that I appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, it's like it seemed like they were all these bigger actors. I think were intrigued by the subject matter. Like I said, it's a well told, you know, representation, and it's an important story, and it's a story that is happening for millions, you know, probably. But I mean, let's be honest. I mean, just many veterans, not just in America but around the world. But in this case, you know, talking about American veterans, it's a very, very real thing. Though at the same time, is like, you know, again, to connect back to Idaho, because we're talking about this being small budget, we're talking about this, you know, but you know, we just had Napoleon Dynamite, which was made for like $5, but it looked great.
Right.
That's the thing, is like, and I got to get back to kind of like what Will is saying, is like, yeah, I mean, you can have a low budget, but just take a second to frame something. Just take a second.
It's just so unstylized in like any way.
That's what was missing, and that's the thing that I kind of like said. You know, it could have elevated it a bit, because like I said, there's all those pieces that were there, and there's pieces, and like, you know, like you were saying, Chris, I mean, it hit me too. I mean, like I was like, you know, at the end of the movie, I'm like, okay, yeah, all right, okay, got some feelings.
He also did that for Napoleon Dynamite. Don't let him fool you.
Yeah.
And monster trucks. Like he didn't talk about that on camera, man.
Yeah, but I was crying at the end of that movie because I had to watch it.
Yeah. I was going to say, conversely to Ollie's story about his mental health, this podcast is somehow destroying my mental health from having to watch. We've watched a lot of turds. I'm not going to lie to you.
Dude, we've had. I think it's nearly 160 movies that we've done this year for this podcast, which is bonkers.
That's wild to think about.
It is.
Yeah.
It's well, you know what? Oof. It's helping my mental health, so thank you guys. So I'll tell you what, we'll put this one to bed. We'll leave this one behind. But the one I want to get to next is, I do want to talk about A River Runs Through It. So first of all, before we say anything else, so Kristen, have you seen this movie before? What's your relationship to this movie? Why'd you pick this movie?
So I think A River Runs Through It is, when you say Montana, that is the movie that everyone thinks of, and the book everyone thinks of. So it's kind of criminal to ignore it. I think you guys would have gotten hate mail or something.
It is fun to ignore those movies.
Yeah. We have skipped over the obvious choice a number of times.
Yeah. And I have seen it. I saw it when I was a kid because my Nana was obsessed with it. And I hadn't seen it in like 20 years or something. And I'm not like super glad that I did again. Like it's not for me.
It is.
Will was texting me saying I'm going to die of boredom.
Yeah. I was clinging to life while I was texting her, just like I can't do this.
It's a movie I have wanted to see for 20 years. It's a movie that I've had on my list of like, no, I've heard great things. Like I like Robert Redford. I've enjoyed some of the movies he's done. Of course, I like Brad Pitt. And I'm like, okay, like let's do this. And I'm like, I'm 30 minutes in and I'm like waiting to like this movie. And then and I pause it and I'm like, it's one of those movies, and the guys know, is that when I'm bothered, I go and rant to Mrs. She's always just in the bedroom, and I'll open the door and I just talk at her.
He's smoking a cigarette, just like, I don't know what's going on.
Exactly. Just imagine it. I'm just like, but it's very much that kind of energy. And then I just kind of like close the door and go back to my movie.
Yeah.
And it was quite confounding to me that this movie it makes so many choices that I wasn't sure why. But before we continue, because I know that Will is going to be on Team Ollie about this one, because we were texting, and it sounds, Kristen, that you might be the same, that Ryan has a very, very deep love for this movie. So Ryan, I want you to tell us, before we get started, Ryan, tell us about your relationship to this movie and why.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. This movie is a slog. It's very, very slow. It's tedious. It's like a movie you'd be forced to watch at school on like a rainy day or something. But like I said, like my dad was really into fly fishing. He had read this book. He would go to fishing trips in Montana. He'd like go to Yellowstone and probably just to get away from our family. Now I'm just now realizing that. But he'd taken me to see this movie, and like I said, I was probably 9 years old, and I don't think I'd seen it since then because I just didn't watch these kinds of movies. Like I was watching RoboCop, your RoboCops, your Leprechauns, what have you, your cliffhangers, and so I hadn't seen it in forever, and I just threw it on, and I like this to me is like this is I see this movie, I see my dad, like it's my dad movie, so I associate that with him and our relationship and everything we've been through. So I hold it at a different regard, and watching it again with completely fresh eyes at the age that I am now, I had a different fondness for it. And I really did. Like, I thought it was incredibly beautiful, like beautifully shot. And I thought I really enjoyed it, but it's not for everyone. It's a fucking boring ass movie, but I'm watching it and I still have tears rolling down because I'm just thinking of my dad.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, and the thing is, and that's the special thing about movies. And we talked about this before, that we're all, the three of us, at least Kristen, it sounds like you as well, but we'll watch movies a million times. I watch movies I know by heart so I can feel the way I want to feel, so I know, oh man, I need to have a good cry. I'm watching this movie. Oh, I just want to think about things. I'm watching this movie. I want to laugh and cry. I'm watching Hot Fuzz. You know what I mean? But it's like they're
scared stupid.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, so for me, Naked Gun. The Naked Gun is the movie I think about my father. Because I remember watching it with my dad. It's the pitching scene. Strike one, strike two, strike two. I'm watching it. I am about 12 years old, 11 years old. It's the hardest I've ever seen my father laugh, like wheezing. Like it's one of my favorite memories. So whenever I watch that, like I'm always thinking of my dad. It's such a ridiculous thing, if years from now when Dad's gone, it's like, oh, I'll watch The Naked Gun, the stupidest movie ever. I miss my dad, but yeah, movies can do that to you. So yeah, now we can rip into this movie and apologize in advance to Ryan.
No, like I said, I knew this going into it, and I don't disagree with you at all. It's just I have this affectation with this film that I associate with my dad, because that was our thing growing up. Our bonding experience was he was taking me to all these movies, and for better or worse, he took me to see this one, and I was like, why am I watching this? It was 1992.
92, yeah, but it feels like a 1950s.
No ninjas in this. There's no, no giant robots. Yeah, what does this
no
have
leprechauns.
For a small child? No leprechauns. Okay, I had a revelation about Robert Redford, like watching this movie, and it reminded me of this interview somebody gave a long time ago, where they talked about they had asked Robert Redford if he had ever struck out with a woman, and he did not understand what that meant. He couldn't wrap his mind around the concept of like a woman not wanting Robert Redford. and I think when you've lived like your whole life like that, I think the most creative and imaginative you can get is like, yeah, what if like two brothers, they fished a lot, You know, like I think that's that's his idea of like, I'm going off book, I'm doing something crazy. Like he just does not have that creative energy.
Okay, look, there's something I have to address, okay, about this movie, and it frustrated the hell out of me, okay? And this is a big part of the rant that Mrs. got. But I've, of course, never seen this movie, but heard about it. I know Robert Redford directed it. I'm assuming that he is going to be at the very beginning of the movie where an old guy is tying flies. I'm like, okay, that's probably Robert Redford. And of course, we've got Brad Pitt, who looks exactly like Robert Redford looked like when he was younger. So then the movie starts and he's doing voiceover, and he's being played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt in his first movie role.
This first movie.
So for the first 10 minutes until they age up, I'm assuming Joseph Gordon-Levitt is Brad Pitt, and that Robert Redford is also older Brad Pitt. But no, that's not how it works out. And then, okay, so fine, you've annoyed me. You've annoyed me by like, come on, that was the obvious bit of casting ever is this, because you're doing the voice. We get to the end of the fucking movie, it's not even Robert Redford. So Robert Redford has hired another actor, but he's doing the voiceover for the movie, but he's not using Brad Pitt as young him? What the hell is he doing?
It was so bizarre that like, and even like I was telling you guys, even in our text thread, I'm like, it looks like they cast the kids wrong for like who like they grew up to be later. Like the kid who plays the young Brad Pitt character totally looks exactly like a young Craig Schaefer. And that made me think like, okay, I kind of wonder if on the day they mixed up the kids' roles and like something happened because like their casting doesn't make any sense. The idea that Joseph Gordon-Levitt grows up to look like Craig Schaefer is absolutely insane. Craig Schaefer, I was telling you guys, looks like one of the villains from Dick Tracy. Like I'm sorry, he's not an unattractive guy. He's just an interesting looking guy who looks like Rob Bottin made the special effects for his face.
I told you guys for some reason I misremembered. I thought the main actor in this was going to be Tom Everett Scott. Like I don't know why I had that in my mind. And then when Craig Schaefer showed up, I'm like, am I watching the right fucking movie? What is happening here?
I mean, like, so I'm sorry, Craig. I'd never heard of you. I don't think I've ever seen him in anything. So I was so confused. It's like this movie stars Brad Pitt, Tom Skerritt, and people. Like, like Emily Lloyd. Like she was good in the movie, but I'm also like, who are you? You know, why don't I know who these people are? But like Craig Schaefer, who went on to have a real career in B movies. And like he is the #1 on the call sheet.
Yeah.
He's ahead of Brad.
Having Brad Pitt as the supporting role in this is wild.
Like,
but
I was confused. And like he does have a weird, I'm like, Ryan, you're right. He's not an unattractive guy. And Will, you're right. He does look like he's from Dick Tracy. And like, you know, I've got my own dent in my chin. He's just got a weird face.
He looks like you left David Boreanaz out inside for too long. I'm very sorry. That does not mean you're unattractive, Craig.
What did I say?
That is not what that means.
I think I said he looks like Hallmark Patrick Bateman. Did I say that in the text thread? Like, he's got very like resting serial killer face, but
again,
not in the fun way.
Insult.
Not in the fun way. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Craig, we know you're listening. We mean it all with love.
It was just a strange bit of casting. I'm gonna go with it. It was a weird bit of casting. Kristen, what do you think about Craig?
How handsome is he? Finally weigh in.
I think it's hard when you're cast opposite young Brad Pitt looking like maybe the best he's ever looked in his life. Like he's so hot in this movie. Yeah. Sorry.
No.
It's
so attractive. And maybe that's part of the casting is like he's so charming and like that's his whole character is that he is just this really personable, charming, like he really sucks you in. So, you know, and in comparison, his brother is like super boring and kind of stuck up. And so that could be the intention behind it, but it's like, oh, you wasted Brad Pitt a little bit there.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I mean, this is the thing that surprised me the most because it was young Brad Pitt, and as he started off, I was like, oh, okay, he's still figuring it out because you know, like you see Brad Pitt now, he's much more relaxed, he's just very, very chill, but I wasn't expecting Brad Pitt to be the best part of the movie, and he was, and it's like, the character, there's no arc. I mean, even for Pitt's character's arc is like you're saying, like Kristen's saying, is he's a bit of like, He's a man
He's a
about
drinker.
town.
He's a drinker. He's a gambler. Like
Yeah, I know, but he's an
yeah.
alcoholic, but it doesn't seem to have any effect on his life. So he's not a negative alcoholic. He's just always drinking. Hey, do you
he
want to
keeps
drink?
getting arrested, and they're like, "We got your brother again." And he's like, "Okay."
And like,
Yeah.
he likes to go dancing, but at the same time, it's like everybody else's character. Craig Schaefer's character is just beep. It's the same with Tom Skerritt. I am just a preacher. Beep. There's no
And
drama.
their mother is just like, "My boys."
My boys.
Right.
You know, they have a fist fight that she breaks up. The only conflict of the movie is 28 seconds long, and then it is done.
He even says, he's like,
we
"And
never fought again.
Never fought again."
Yeah.
Literally, full stop, underline.
Don't expect any more excitement, audience.
Yeah.
We're done with that.
All conflict is finished.
Well, and I think you get that too. Like, what's his name? Craig Schaefer. He's the brother that like goes off to college and starts teaching. Like, just goes away for many years, and while Brad Pitt like stays home and gets really good at fly fishing. So when he comes back, he sees how good his brother has become at this thing that's like intrinsically tied to their family. It's like what they would always do. That's why this like resonated so much with me. Is like my dad was so into fly fishing that, and he wasn't a pastor though, like Tom Skerritt was, but I like that how he was so rigid with these kids, but they had this one brief respite where they were like on the river, like that was their church,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tom
And I was
Skerritt,
actually-
like, he gets the kids together, fly fishers, the best of the best, the elite. Sorry, I went Top Gun there.
Top fish, yeah.
But that's
Top
that's
trout.
kind of what this movie was missing, was like
Yes.
some payoff to the fly fishing. Like, in the movie we were just talking about, Mending the Line, there is a payoff to the fly fishing. There's like a meaning behind it. Here it's like, man, he was really good at fly fishing. Really good.
Yep.
Anyway, that's our movie, and it's just like, well, okay.
Well, actually, the movie is 98% of nothing happens. People fish. We're brothers. And then something interesting happens, but it happens off camera. They go, "Oh yeah, by the way, he was beaten to death with a gun, and he's dead at the end."
Yeah.
We only had a budget for one fist fight in this movie, and we spent it early on.
Yeah.
So
Just
The real wrong kid died energy in this one. I do like that though, like when he has to go and tell his parents that Brad Pitt's character has died, and he said he was beaten to death, but his hand, the bones in his hands were broken because he was putting up such a fight. And Tom Skerritt's like, which hand was broken? He goes, his right hand. He's like, cool. All right, see you later.
I was confused because I was like, okay, so wait a minute. We were upset that his hands, like, was Tom Skerritt hoping that maybe he'd still be able to fish? His hands are broken. I was
No,
genuinely
it
confused.
was that he put up a fight. He didn't go out like a bitch, He was.
yeah,
That was it.
Is that
not
what
like his
this is
college
what I mean.
educated son.
We've had voiceover for 100% of the movie, and they can't explain that to us. Like, I didn't pick that up. Did anyone? Kristen,
Yeah.
did you pick that up? Like the broken hands
No,
thing?
I actually thought it was like fishing related, that
Me
he was
too.
having a moment of like, not only did they take my boy, but they destroyed his, his talent or something. Like, if he had lived, he couldn't have fished
still- he
like
couldn't
with the
even-
artistry. He used to
Yeah,
fish
maybe
with
that's
or
I
whatever.
didn't
don't
figure
know.
that. That's true. I thought it was just that he didn't go out like a pussy. Because he was always known for being the fight. Even you get that scene when they're kids that he's not scared of anything, and he's
Yeah.
always got that dog in him.
Oh, I do like.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's another bit that did make me laugh, which is when they decide to run the rapids, and so we also had a river runs through it just last week as well.
No, no, it's
River
no,
Wild.
Sorry,
River
River Wild.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
River Wild, where some excellent stunt work. You can tell they've got the actors in the sort of like on the river. It's very dramatic. And on this one, okay, fine. We can see it's obviously stuntmen. Fine. But it's it's two shots. It's just just as it's going over the fall, and as it switches, and it's just the two most.
Oh, in the boat.
the
Oh yeah.
stiffest,
Yeah, just
like-
the biggest, literal
Yeah.
dummies you could
They're
ever.
like-
Like, the human beings.
Yeah.
They're just completely rigid. It just cracked me up.
It was
like,
two
oh,
CPR dolls that went over the edge. Like it was.
Crash
It was
dummies.
bad.
Yeah.
It cracked me up. The thing is, right? this movie. Okay, how could they have made this movie better? They did make this movie better, and it still has Brad Pitt in it. It's called Legends of the Fall. It's it's a movie that's about brothers, but it's actually got people speaking like human beings, and it's got people having emotions, and people getting angry, and people just actual things happening. That's the thing that really confounds me. In A River Runs Through It, it does. No one is speaking like how a real person would speak. Nothing happens the way reality happens. They've done all the work. It looks great, and there's production value, and they've made a town look like it used to, and they're out there. I mean, oh my God, it's like Montana sponsored this movie. I mean, it's great, but it's just got like, that's why I described it as like a 1950s movie made in 1990, because it's just got this lazy voiceover. And I think voiceover can work in movies. I love it in Scorsese movies, but in this case, it's just.
It made me think of like the voiceover in like Stand By Me, like something. If a better director, not better, but just a different director's approach on this film. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know Robert Redford's like directorial filmography, but I think you get the shots that you do get in this movie of them fishing, like of the line, like it's fucking beautiful.
The
Like you
stuff
can't
with-
deny that.
You know, and that's what I've
The
always.
shadow casting, like my dad taught me what that was.
Oh,
Is
cool.
tricking the fish into like the whole point of fly fishing is outsmarting the fish into thinking the fly that you handmade is a real fly. Like that's the beauty of fly fishing. And
I think Robert Redford's hand on the wheel in this case was just a mistake. I know he's adapting a book, and like, you know, I think as an
Sequel?
actor director, you know, I thought that he would, like, you know, get these actors to act, but he's almost given them nothing. And like I said, the only real acting going on that I feel was coming from Brad Pitt.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then like the girl he had, the native girl that he took into the bar, she had some actual.
Yeah.
That was the
character.
well, yeah, and the fact that they made her. Well, I feel like I remember, like, was she on a lot of heroin? Like, there was so much more, or if it was just alcohol, I don't know, but there was so much depth to that relationship, I think.
Mhm.
You know,
And also, like, this movie is, again, so it's another movie we've done on the show, but it's like, you know, or it's not even a movie, it's a season of Scorsese. It was the one we did,
Killers of the Flower Moon,
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Casino.
Yeah. But yes, Killers of the Flower Moon, you know, is very this adjacent. You know, they've put the work in Oklahoma to make that town. They've taken us back. They've got the old vehicles. But it just felt real. And I feel like this movie has suffered in our viewing because of other movies that we've had on the show or other movies we've seen. I had built it up in my head, and I honestly was just disappointed for most of the movie.
It feels very like old Hollywood, that kind
That's
of
what I mean.
like, yeah, right? Is that okay? Yeah, no, I get that
Very-
for sure. Yeah,
Very old and dusty.
Yeah.
And what was bothering me the entire time is the idea that like the brothers just really felt like they didn't like each other for most of the movie, and they just kind of were like, well, we're in this family together, but they didn't do enough to like address that or talk about it. I just got the feeling the entire movie, I'm like, this feels like a story about two guys who don't really like each other, but they're related and share a lot of common interests, and that seems like an interesting place for a story, and it just really doesn't get into that.
Nope. We didn't get into any conflict between the brothers. We didn't get into anything. There's just no conflict. And then, like I said, of all of the things to then do off camera, is to have Brad Pitt murdered.
yeah. I feel like I remembered that differently too. I thought he was, maybe I'm thinking of a different film, but I thought, because they allude to the fact that he owes a lot of money because he plays poker, right? He's gambling. And that's not at all how he dies. He dies defending a woman. But I thought he was like killed in some gambling den for some
That's
reason.
what I
like,
thought. Yeah, I
know.
thought it was probably a gambling debt of some kind.
I mean, I guess it very well could have been, but I don't.
But who knows? The movie didn't tell us. I mean,
Yeah,
or
I
if
do
it
love
did,
that scene where they have the fish measuring contest.
That was funny.
That was
Yes, the
great.
quite literal dick measuring contest,
Mhm.
but like, and like the dad just like lays his hog down.
Yeah, yeah.
And just goes walking away. Big dick energy.
His
Big Tom
dick-
Skerritt energy.
Tom Skerritt's dick can breathe underwater.
So
Sorry,
he survived
Kristen.
the alien for so long.
Well, there you go. I mean,
I did though love the is it Edie McClurg
Oh my God, of
from
course. Yeah.
from
Ferris
Airborne.
Bueller.
Day Off. Oh, she's just a treasure. I mean, she was good in this movie. I liked her. She was good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like I was just waiting for her to pull a pencil out of her hair.
Mhm. A whole fish.
Yeah.
It just cuts to Edie McClurg after Tom's scared, and she just pulls like a fucking 6-pound trout out of her hair. Oof.
Yeah.
He was a righteous dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, she was
But,
great.
Yeah.
But like,
Always is.
I mean, yeah. So Kristen as well. Like the Montana of this. All right, let's
Yeah.
touch into this for a little. I mean, it is dripping in Montana. Have you ever been to any of these places? I mean, like much like you were saying with the last film was very familiar. Did you get that kind of vibe for this one?
Yeah, because actually, interestingly enough, it's set in Missoula. I've never been to Missoula, but I found out that it's actually filmed mostly around here too.
Hmm.
So they filmed it in Bozeman and Livingston and in Gallatin Canyon with on the Gallatin River. So a lot of those river shots that are like there's like cliffs and stuff. That's around here. So it looks very familiar for sure. And I loved the scene where Jesse's brother comes to town and he's from California
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they hate him. And I'm like, oh, that's something's never changed. Like,
Mhm.
you know, the California guy in the bar, like trying to impress everybody, and they're like, this fucking guy, you know?
Oh, the
They'll
sun.
feel
Can
differently
you
when I show up,
imagine?
though.
Yeah.
When I
The
show
s-
up, they'll be all happy to see me, I'm sure.
Hell yeah.
For sure. Just change your plates
Yeah,
before you
yeah.
show up.
Puss
So,
man goes fishing.
yeah.
I did like he
That's-
gets it with like a cricket sweater around his
Oh,
neck. Everything.
yeah.
Yeah,
He goes, takes him out fishing. He brings the
the crazy
drunk
drunk wild lady.
who's
Yeah,
famous for
beauty pageant.
bareback riding horses, something like that. I forget what the voiceover was. I'm like, "Yeesh."
Yeah.
But that scene where they pass out together in the sun, I think I was telling you guys before we started recording, and maybe misremembering this, maybe this was a story my dad had told me from the book, but the tattoo that she has on her butt cheeks, it's not in the book. If I'm wrong, please correct me, but it didn't say love. It was just two M's on each butt cheek that was supposed to spell mom. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that has always stuck in my mind. And if I were to ever get a tattoo, that's what I would do.
Has anybody read the book? Has anyone read the book? So Ryan, your dad read the book though.
Yes, yeah,
Oh, well,
definitely.
no wonder, man. Like
Yeah.
I said, I'm sorry. You know what? Yeah, I mean, haven't we trounced all over some of my favorite childhood memories? And you
No,
take
never.
much glee into this. So you know
Nope.
what? I'm not apologizing for
Name 7 times.
Can't do it.
I just, yeah, I mean, like even just the voiceover choice, the choice of using like real historical pictures and things, it just felt like a lecture.
I will say I did like that because when they were flashing through the photo, it looked like they actually got the proper film stock to take these photographs
Right.
instead of doing like a Photoshop of putting Brad Pitt's face on a vintage photograph, which always
Right.
looks like really poorly executed. But this, I think, really captured. I was like, oh, that was them taking that extra step to do that I thought that was kind of cool because you never see it.
I mean, I texted you guys that this movie made me feel like I was watching the Ken Burns Civil War episode of Community. Where
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
I mean, I do think they actually used some of the music from the actual Ken Burns Civil War
it
documentary.
sounded like
Like,
it.
It sounded like the same exact music.
So it's just like and it's so strange. This movie is highly regarded. It's it is well reviewed. Did it win an Oscar for
I was gonna say, it seems
cinematography?
very Oscar baby.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
It's just like, yeah, so it won cinematography, nominated for Best Music Original Score and Best Adapted Screenplay, made $66 million off a 12.
And I think Best Kiss at the MTV Movie Awards, right? Like that's
But
He did open mouth kiss that bass, so yeah.
yeah, I think that's what it won for.
there was a lot of kissing of fish in both the movies, actually. Like Brian Cox always gives kisses of fish and says thank you. But like, I'm honestly like, I felt like I was taking crazy pills when I'm looking at some, look, tasteful to a fault. this period drama combines a talented cast, beautifully filmed, and great work from Robert Redford. I'm like, no, this movie had no plot. Nothing happens. I'm confounded. It looks very pretty, but I'm mostly just angry. That's my review of this movie. Didn't like it. Did not care for it. Will not watch it again. It's just, I'm so surprised. I was expecting it to be an absolute banger.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because, like I said, I just associate it with my dad. I'm not defending it. I'm not saying it's a good movie, but I just hold it in a different place in my heart, and it just triggers memories of being with my dad. So that's why I'm just like, I hear what you're saying, and you're not wrong, but I just have a different like.
A River Runs Through It and Terrifier 2 are both like in the you and your dad's special memories.
Hang on.
All right, so Kristen, I'm going to do one of my little famous segues right now. But Kristen, have you ever seen the movie Terrifier?
No.
Do not watch this movie. And it was like we were all in. We've been doing this podcast for over a year, and we actually managed to all be in town, in Arizona at the same time, and we got together and we had a movie night, and we watched the movie Airborne,
which was rad.
Rollerblading movie from 1992.
A rollerblading movie from the same year. And we started off, Will and I making fun of it, and that movie by the end completely won us.
That movie fucking rips, dude.
Banger of a 20-minute rollerblading action scene. Then this guy puts on Terrifier, and
you knew I was gonna put it on though. I didn't
ruined our lives.
I didn't just pull it out of nowhere. Like, we have talked about this film, and it's perfect. No notes.
It is truly horrifying. It's like, and there's a sequel that's even longer, and they're making a third one. But I tell you what, so just don't trust anything that Ryan says about movies. Mostly, it's kind of what I'm saying.
That's fair. That's fair. That is fair. I'll take that on the chin. I will. Yeah.
But so Brad Pitt trained himself to fly fish for 4 weeks before the shooting. Honestly, no one knew how to fish before.
It's shockingly hard to do. Like, it seems like an easier thing. Fly fishing is so much more difficult than just regular cast fishing. It's more of an art form, I think. And you see, like, it just looks so beautiful, the way it's shot and the way the motion of the lure. It's a beautiful thing. I still haven't done it since I was 9 years old, but I'd like to.
Yeah, I like how they get into Brad Pitt is an artist, and their dad taught them this like methodical, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's not the way to do it.
You don't fish with a metronome? God damn it.
But yeah, no, I like that. And like I said, there's moments and there's flashes and there's all these sort of things, and like it looks pretty at times, and like I said, it definitely takes advantage of Montana. Like, in as much as I said that Mending the Line really dropped the ball of just like so much like production value surrounding you, not capturing it in a way. And I think a perfect example being, like Kristen's saying, is they're both shot in the same place. But, you know, it's chalk and cheese. It's two sides of the scale. You know, you've got cinema and you've got TV, like, kind of vibe. And it's like, that's the one thing that definitely A River Runs Through It is doing very, very well, is just making me want to go to Montana. Because it's stunning.
Kristen, I wanted to ask, what is it about Montana that makes it like the epicenter of fly fishing? Like, is it just the combination of the terrain, the rivers? Like, it seems like if you're into fly fishing, Montana is the mecca of where to do it.
Yeah, I know that there's like just a huge variety of fish and like species of fish that are like not deep water fish, so they're like living and, you know, swimming close to the surface. So it's definitely like angler's paradise as far as like what you can get. And it might be like that, you know, when you go deep sea fishing, people are after like the biggest fish you can get, and I think you can do that here without having to deep sea fish. You can get a big awesome fish. And
well, it seems like a different kind of fishing as well, isn't it? Like, say, deep sea fishing, like you're saying, it's a bit more aggressive. You go out there on the boat, you know, and you're looking for the biggest fish. Whereas you go fly fishing, it's very much about, and like both movies get into, is it's just a place and a way to quiet your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's no better place to do it than in like some like God's country.
And
Right.
Ollie,
Like the paradise of it
Yeah.
all.
Ollie, where you are in Texas, people just go to the canal and use handguns to
Right,
shoot
you take your AR-15 and you just
Yeah.
chuck a grenade in there, and like you take what you can get.
Why wouldn't you just like plug in a toaster and just toss it in? And then just...
see,
There you go.
See, so
How hard is that?
Texans don't go fishing on rivers. We go floating. I was just doing it on Monday. You get a tube and you get your floating like cooler and you just spend 3 hours floating down a river, and just
Was Kevin Bacon there?
fishing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's but no, fishing is a big deal. I mean, there's the thing. Still never caught a fish, and then my brother-in-law, who couldn't be more Texan, he took my daughter. I'm on the boat. Tia had an $11, if that, $8 Dora the Explorer pink fishing
Yeah.
thing.
That she borrowed from you.
Yeah, and like and took
was a
8
hand-me-down.
minutes. 8 minutes she caught a fish, and I'm just
Wow.
like, man, 8 hours, nothing.
I
Still.
remember my dad had taken me. There's up in Pennsylvania there you can go to what's called like a hatchery, and it's basically a man-made lake in different tiers. So they basically grow the fish specifically for you to catch, and it's almost impossible not to catch a fish. Like
See-
every fucking thing. So when he did that when I was a kid, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing, because you're basically guaranteed to catch a fish every time, and you can take home whatever you catch. They charge you by weight. They got all the fish. We'd bring them home, and my mom would cook the fish. So that was a fun experience as well.
Well, see, that's the thing. So I was in the south of France. I was 12 with my godfather, and they took us to a trout farm, which was there was a pond, which was 98% fish and 2% water. As in, it was they just like you couldn't even see the water for all
You
the
just
fish.
dip a net in.
Yeah, you just grab a big scoop.
So
And,
technically, I caught a fish because, like I said, I dipped the thing in. I couldn't help but catch one, and then there's a picture of me as I'm like hitting it with that piece of wood to go home, and then we had fish that night. I don't consider that catching a fish.
No.
I consider that moving a fish from an area where
Yeah.
it was probably going to die anyway,
Right.
to another
Yeah.
area. That's like catching a fish there is the artistry to it that I still don't consider.
That's like catching a lobster at Red Lobster.
Yeah.
Like you just you go to the tank, you pick the lobster
Which-
you want.
Yeah.
I just want it on record. I put the lobster back. Okay, you can drop the charges, Red
It's
Lobster.
the reason they went bankrupt. Are you guys familiar with the term noodling? Are you guys familiar with this?
Is that where you tickle?
Oh yeah.
No, it's I think they do it in like in the South. It's catching catfish, but
Yeah.
you do it with your bare hands.
Hands,
And you
yeah.
basically just dig your hand into this like dank cave and pray that you pull a fish out or lose an arm. It's wild.
I have seen. Yeah, back at right this minute, we would get videos of those. It is kind of
Yeah.
actually quite cool when people do that. I will give.
But
that credit.
catfish, it's trout are a very delicious fish. Catfish, I'm not really a fan
Yeah,
of.
that's it's a garbage fish for garbage.
It's a garbage fish. Sure.
All right, so at this point, then I'm going to put fly fishing behind us. We've done 2 movies of fly fishing. We find it very relaxing. We understand that Ryan loves doing it with his dad, and we also understand that A River Runs Through It was the most boring movie I've watched this year. But there is one more movie that I'm sure Ryan's going to have a couple of hot takes on, as is Will.
Oh yeah, again, I've forgotten completely about this movie.
There is one more.
Twice in one
The movie
episode.
that when I saw it, I was like surprised. It's a Taylor Sheridan movie who came out of the blocks as a writer and a director with 3 incredible movies. He wrote Sicario, he wrote Hell or High Water, and he wrote and directed Wind River that we had on the show. The guy knows what he's doing. So when they announced that this movie was coming out, it was during the pandemic. It'd been on my radar. I like Angelina Jolie. No, I just do. Mrs. does not. I do. But when I saw the movie, I was like, oh, okay. Like I was expecting, because everything else that we'd seen from him before was always kind of elevated. It was, be it bank robbery, be it with solving a murder, be it, we're dealing with cartels, but there was always just that element of, man, this is really good.
Yeah.
Like this movie is good, but I just watched cliffhanger. That's the way I describe it to people. I go, Those Who Wish Me Dead is a 90s action movie. It's like Cliffhanger. It's like Passenger 57. It's like Bish Bash Bosh. That's what it is. It's not elevated. It's just it is what it is. Doesn't make it a bad movie, but I know
No.
Will's gonna have comments on the writing.
Yeah, it's just crazy that Taylor Sheridan was attached to this film specifically. It just feels so out of the realm of movies that he makes.
Yeah,
you know?
but it does feel like a really high budget episode of Yellowstone. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's like that, you know, when he started out, you know, I knew him as the sheriff from Sons of Anarchy. I've talked about that before. Then he gets killed off because, well, he found out that he can actually write scripts. And his, you know, his first script that got made is the movie Sicario, which is incredible. And so to be like, oh, that's your first script?
Yeah.
Well,
and its sequel to Fast 2 Cario,
then...
which we've talked about on the podcast.
I do think it was a mistake getting rid of Benicio del Toro and getting Tyrese. Like, I think that definitely was a weird
But that part
choice.
where they go to space, though, was dope.
That was awesome.
You know what's better than
Yeah.
drugs? Family.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
Drugs
this one-
with your family.
Yeah.
those who with me, so like we'll get into it, but my conclusion at the end of it was give this movie 10 more minutes and $10 million more, and I think it would have been an absolute banger, because
How so?
it's a movie that in 2 or 3 places they decide to tell us, not show. So there's like they accelerate the script by just getting us like an exposition dump in a talkie scene, which could have just didn't need to happen. You could have showed us those emotions by just making the movie a little bit longer, just giving us like those context clues instead of explaining it. Which again, and the reason it frustrates me is because it's a movie called Those Who Wish Me Dead, which is the words which we're assuming is written on the note that we never get to see. We never get to read the note that Angelina Jolie reads, the one that has all his secrets. It's the one that says, those who wish me dead are coming for me, and this is why they're coming for me. Please protect my son, is what we assume. So this movie has already let us assume and read context clues. Why then spoon feed us to speed up 10 minutes of movie that you could have done? That's my sort of thing. And the other $10 million is just to make the fire look better. That's all.
Or if there could at least be fire in this movie other than in the last 10 minutes of the film. For a movie where like a big chunk of it is a forest fire is coming, it really doesn't show up until like 50 minutes after it's lit. Like this is the weird. Yeah, I have a lot to say about the script, but I'll wait till.
I think I was talking about, was like, when I heard about this movie coming out, and I maybe we talked about this. I don't know if this was like made during the pandemic or if it was just like in that window where there were no movie theaters and everything was just being dumped on HBO. And because when I'm thinking about it, rewatching this, because I remember watching it in 2021, whenever, thinking like, it looks like it was a pandemic made movie because a lot of the cast is kind of sporadic and separated. It's just usually 2 or 3 people at most. So I just wondered if that was part of the filmmaking choice. But yeah, we always talk about this on the podcast. Like, we love those 90s schlocky, Rennie Harlan-esque action films. We did Cliffhanger, we did Sudden Death. And this is like, we were like, I wish there were more movies like that. And this is basically what that is.
It is.
But it just doesn't hit the same for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah,
like, just go watch Firestorm with Howie Long instead.
Right.
Better fucking movie.
So no, the movie was made in 2019, so it was made pre-pandemic.
Oh,
It came
okay.
out during the pandemic. So I remember like it got bought by HBO, you know, so it was like a streamer.
Gotcha.
I think it came out in theaters, but it didn't make much money. But again, that's because it's the time when a lot of us weren't really going to the theater because we didn't want to die. You know, unless it was like a really good movie, then we go. But yeah, I mean, like it's, and we're not the only ones to think it. I mean, like you even just like you read some of the critical consensus. Its first sentence is literally a squarely traditional 90s style action thriller. It's a 3-act, just like, you know, bad guys, good guys, explosions, and like, you know, instead of there being, you know, like we've said it before, you know, Sylvester Stallone had got a hold of it, there would have been even more guns, you know, like all that kind of stuff. But like, I like what it is. For me, so there's a book I read. Nick, I can't remember who wrote it, but it's a book called The Smoke Jumper. I read it when I was 18 years old. And it was one of those things I loved that book. I read it a couple of times, but I was like going, a smoke jumper, I was like, that's like a job I would like to do. That is a really cool job. And like, I think they did it's really cool, the elements they get into this about the ideas about forest fires. And Like just the idea of like for me is like, wow, she spends the whole summer by herself in a tower. What? How does she get food? Like
She can get out of the tower. Like she can go fly fishing, dude. Like
but it is
And-
another
and
movie where we are dealing with someone with post-traumatic stress disorder.
yeah,
So
because
we
she
got-
watched two kids or three kids like horrifically burned to death.
Yeah, and yeah,
and
one
did
And
nothing.
usually, again, that's my favorite part of movies, but only if it happens at the beginning.
which it did not. Which it did not. But yeah, so okay, so the plot of the movie is that the movie starts in Jacksonville, Florida, and it turns out that basically, they don't give us too much information, but like a district attorney is blown up. His house is blown up by Nicholas Hoult and Aidan Gillen, who I like in this movie. I like those two. They're good together, and I like that just the bad guy assassins, which is kind of fun. And then we come over to this other guy. Jake Weber. He's from Dawn of the Dead, things like that. But we just basically, he's with his son. He sees that the house has exploded, and he just reacts in the moment. He goes, "We got to go on the run." He realizes that they're in danger, and so he takes his son with him with no prep, and they head to Montana, where his brother-in-law, right? Is that his brother?
Yes, John Bernthal.
So yeah, sort of runs a survival school. Now the assassins are good assassins. They put two and two together, and they are able to get ahead. Did they meet with the randomest bit of stunt casting in the movie?
Wild. I forgot he's in this movie. And
It's Tyler Perry's "Those Who Wish Me Dead." Like,
a scene that could have been done with a phone call.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Right.
why do they have to go to this, like, was
They
it
go
truck
all
stop?
the way back to the airport.
Right?
To meet him, and then go all the way back.
Yeah.
It was
But
just
insane.
they do say it was strange that he was there. I think that's supposed to be an indicator of just how serious this is. So basically, I mean, like I said, this is what I mean. We're given all these context clues and we figure it out, and then we spoon-feed stuff later. This is what bothers me.
Yeah.
But it's like, all right, so we understand that there are some very high-paying people who have hired very professional mercenaries, and this is like what they do, and they're very well funded. They've got airplanes. They've got people in state. They've got vehicles at the ready. They've got the best weapons necessary. So you understand this is serious.
They have no problem murdering fucking everyone.
Literally anybody.
right.
Like
The amount of people that just get point blank shot in the head, again, a testament to classic 90s thrillery action films. Like, they don't ask any questions. They're like, I need your car. Kablamo.
Yeah. And then like, so Aidan Gillen, like, he's like a bit more unhinged. I like Nicholas Hoult. He was a bit more like, we don't need to do this. He's just a soldier.
Yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah.
They just get given missions and they go and accomplish their missions. It's like, whatever, you know, it's what I'm
Oh
getting.
boy, here I go killing again.
Yeah.
Do you think Tyler Perry is playing the same lawyer that he does in Gone Girl?
Absolutely.
Like, his
I think
career
this
is taking a
tied
weird
to the
turn.
Gone Girl case.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
The Gone Girl verse.
I want them gone, girl.
So what it does do is it sets up, there's a pretty good action scene, and it's like, I tell you what though, there was a bit like, it did make me giggle. It is like, so the son and the dad, they come under fire, they accelerate, they crash the car, but as the car approaches the sort of thing, we then cut to the shot of the car. They shot that thing out of a cannon because it comes flying. It comes flying off that cliff at like 200 miles an hour. I was like, that was just quite entertaining.
But it didn't like much like every other 90s movie. The car just didn't immediately immolate and just fucking explode.
Right.
Yeah.
Boo.
Yeah. Not like Walking
Sorry.
Tall, where if you like bump into a car, it
Yes.
explodes.
The best car
I
explosion.
was just watching Beverly Hills Cop 2, that bit towards the end where like the limo goes and it just jumps off a thing and then it just cuts to it and it just explodes.
yeah.
It just like
Hell
immediately.
yeah.
I like when they do that and the car explodes in midair before
Yeah.
it even impacts the
Yes.
When
ground.
they've
Like,
triggered it wrong, I've seen
Yeah.
movies that do that. It's like a Bond movie and it just
oh
blows
no,
up.
they
for no
triggered
reason.
it right. That's how cars work. Yeah.
That's right.
Every time I go over a speed bump, I'm worried that my car is just gonna detonate.
But it does set up a pretty cool little premise of the son, who, you know, he tells his son has to watch the dad become.
Oh my
Swiss
god,
cheese.
Swiss cheese, yeah.
He takes
Oof.
25 bullets and he is very dead. And he's sent off with that letter.
No, he doesn't die until after the car. They fucking blast him. Then his foot hits the gas. The car then goes down the cliff
Goes further,
again.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Flips several times, and he's like, oh my God, are you all right?
Yeah.
He's shot multiple times, like, oh, my back is just
Yeah.
great. The
This-
kid is watching this. It's crazy to me.
Dude. Yeah,
This
the kid
regular
watches-
forensic accountant is able to take a lot of punishment
Yeah.
for like
Yeah.
just a normal dude.
But
Whereas Angelina Jolie, our hero, can take no punishment
what,
whatsoever.
are you kidding? She literally falls. The place
Rip
gets struck
burns her
by
hands.
lightning. Yeah.
Yeah.
She falls out of the tower, is busted up. Her hands are filled with rope and everything else.
Her
She gets
feet
the
are
crap
fucked up.
kicked out of her. She gets struck by lightning.
Yeah.
I mean,
All before, struck by lightning, all before like the bad guys show up. Like nature is like killing her
Mhm.
before
Yeah.
the bad guys show up.
And also she like clearly is another film about mental health. She's clearly like suicidal from what she's witnessed. Like they apparently do this thing where she is on the back of a pickup truck, opens a parachute and fucking spins around and doesn't get split in half. Crazy.
Hashtag terrified.
They made like she constantly does that. Yes. Okay.
But yeah, no. So like,
Just to
it's
feel
given us-
something.
It's given us all these pieces, and they, you know, and it kind of comes together. She finds him in the forest, and I do like their little like relationship. I do like the fact she's dealing with trauma. I do think that kid's a great little actor. Like when he's like, you know, trying to describe what's happened, you know, saying that my dad's not around anymore, and I'm like, he breaks my heart. His little lip starts quivering, and he started crying. And he's like, and you know, Taylor Sheridan, he loves to work with people many, many times. Jen Bernthal, he's in Wind River,
Everything.
he's in Sicario. This little kid, he's on Yellowstone now. He's been on Yellowstone for a couple of seasons. And then
He plays John Yellowstone.
and
He's
then
gonna play Kevin Costner's role soon.
there's the other guy, James Jordan, who is one of those smoke jumpers, the two guys that jumped out the plane, the white guy. He is in literally everything. Taylor Sheridan. He's in all of Taylor Sheridan's shows. So he turns up. He's in Mayor of Kingstown. He's in Yellowstone. He's in everything. So he's like best mates with Taylor Sheridan and gets to
Tulsa
be in the
King.
movie. But like you know, all that being said, like it. Apart from like I said, I was bothered by. I mean, you know, actually, Will, now is your turn because I'm about to say is this movie. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It's fun. I like to watch it. It doesn't blow my skirt up. It's not going to win any
But
Oscars. But
in the same vein, because we're like action snobs, think of the movie Extraction, which is also a very 90s homage kind of action film where a man who's been through some shit, he's got mental health issues, has to then take care of this kid, or like A Man on Fire, for example.
Yep.
Like much better films. I don't know why this one is just kind of like meh.
okay, Will's about to tell us. Will, go.
Well, for me, what bothered me right off the bat was just the dialogue was so bad. Like the dialogue is just not. It's as deep as a puddle. Like it's just everyone is just saying their whatever their straight emotion is at the moment. Like I can tell you're dealing with pain. Yeah, I've got a lot of pain. Well, you need to set that aside to do your job. Like it's all dialogue like that, which is surprising coming from Tyler Sheridan, the greatest writer who's ever written anything. But it's just, especially when you look at Sicario, the thing I've started to wonder about his career is like Sicario is amazing, with the exception of the opening where they're in Chandler, Arizona, which doesn't look anything like Chandler, Arizona. Not even close. I'm in Chandler, Arizona right now. Nothing looks like that house in that movie.
You want to get Sicario'd? That's how you get Sicario.
But it's such a jump in quality from like that, and then just everything is still good, not quite as good. And then you get to this where I'm like, this is like Beekeeper level dialogue. Like this is shocking. And there are things that were happening in the movie, like where the bad guys start a forest fire to distract people from like whatever evil. Hey, you can't control a forest fire. Like that is the worst way to distract anybody. And what's even weirder is there is a storm in the movie where lightning is striking the ground, famous for starting forest fires. Doesn't happen once. I don't even think the ground like it has like even a little spark. It's just kind of like lightning hits and it's like, oh,
That's because
that's
Angelina
dangerous.
Jolie catches the lightning bolt, dude. I mean, come on.
Yeah, she gets hit with a lightning bolt and is fine.
Prevents the
Like
fire.
gets up, is just like, oh, I got a cool lightning bolt scar now. I'm like Harry
Oh,
Potter.
fuck,
Anyway, and it's insane. And there's just so many. The fact that the tower can't take a lightning bolt, like
It fries everything.
no, I'm sorry, but no, those absolutely have lightning rods on them. Because guess what? You have something that high, it's gonna get struck by lightning at some point.
This guy watches Twister one time.
Yeah. Yes, Will famously hates Twister, the greatest movie ever made. I was confused by the scene where they had to run across the field of lightning. Like this, so I wanted to ask Kristen, like, so as someone that lives
Our
in
resident lightning expert,
Yep,
Kristen.
you are our
Does lightning chase you like a serial killer?
Well, my question is, do you get lightning like that? Now, I bring this up because in Texas we have our own unique, like, sort of weird and crazy storms that happen. And I've lived all over the world and experienced different things. So, is this a thing, like, where you look and there's just lightning striking everywhere? Because I wouldn't have been running around. I would have been lying on the floor, like avoiding the lightning.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I mean, it's definitely pretty like stormy up in the mountains, but forest fires are usually caused by like human interference up here. So it's not really that level. This was like Murphy's Law, the movie, where like no matter where they went, there was something chasing them, and you know, some random act of God all of a sudden that's just making it harder. So that was wild to me. I was like, I thought the fire was like the main conflict here.
I was so shocked because that's the poster. That's like her job is to deal with, and like it does not come into play until like the last 10 minutes. And but by the way, once they've spoiler alert, save the kid, the camera is like, wow, what a great job we did, and pans back to show like the forest is still on fire. Montana is burning down. And they're like, we saved the kid. I'm just like, I feel like there's a bigger movie happening in the background. And there's like a disaster where like credits.
Well, I'm okay. All right. But then, so we just had Wolverine on the show. So we had Logan on the show. And that's exactly that. It's a smaller movie taking place in the middle of a bigger movie. And it's, so I don't have a problem with that. So this is kind of what I mean. It's like, all right, we're telling a story just that happens in the middle of this other thing that's going on. Yeah, these people are smoke jumpers. And that bit at the end, I think, it's a little bit of what Taylor Sheridan does quite a lot on Yellowstone, which is, you know, it's the showing the cowboy way and showing the people that work outside and showing the lifestyle and the sacrifice of these kind of people. And so at the end, it's him, because it's almost done like a music video. And granted, I did then put that song on my Spotify. But it's like, you know, it's the fire trucks pulling up and it's the helicopters going over. And it's his little nod to, these are the people that keep us safe in Montana. These are the people that sacrifice their lives and stuff like that. You know, whereas that he's just, it seems they were just trying to tell, and I think this is actually based off a book, but it's just telling it is just telling a smaller story in the bigger thing. So that, I mean, I heard you say that, Will, and I was like, all right, but that actually didn't bother me. That was me just going, no, we're just telling the story of a woman with PTSD and a little boy that's just lost his dad, you know, trying to save each other in the middle of this thing.
So now is Angelina Jolie at the end of this movie is she his mom now?
I think that's the way it works.
I think in the sequel, it's going to be like episode 1 to episode 2 of Star Wars, that he's a little boy in this one, but in the next one, he's going to be grown up and then they're going to have a relationship.
He was born in the fire. Sure.
He's going to be played by Hayden Christensen.
Hayden Christensen's
Thomas Hayden Church.
Oh, how you've grown. Yeah.
But like, yeah, I know it is very unclear about that. In the end, it's like, well, I guess
because he's an fucking orphan
now.
Like
he is. He has been orphaned.
And then I also I thought that, because I hadn't seen this in forever, but I for some reason thought John Bernthal's character like dies much earlier than he does, right? Like he just kind of like. Bleh.
Well, he's one of those guys. There were 2 or 3 times in the movie where people made shit decisions, and John Bernthal's character is the one that he goes in to check the tower and he goes, "Hey, if you're in here, stay quiet." And I would have gone, "Nope, nobody's here." You know, instead of, you know what he does? He stays in there for 2 minutes, standing there, talking like this. I was like, dude, what are you doing? It's
and
so obvious.
At first the goons are like, yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything. Wait, his mouth is moving.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, come on, man. Though I did like his wife's character. I did like don't underestimate the 9-month pregnant lady.
Yeah, but even she does.
African American, pregnant, badass.
Yeah,
like,
horse riding with a hunting rifle. She
Yeah.
fucks them up.
the only thing that could have made it better is if she was using a fucking bow and
Well,
arrow.
I was confused. Yeah, that would have been amazing. Go full Rambo. She has bear spray. Now,
Yes.
as like we know, bear spray works
Oh, yeah.
incredibly, but she makes the choice to burn them with it. I
Mm-hmm.
think it would have been a much more effective use if she had just hit them with the bear spray that were like.
Not as cool.
Yeah.
No,
No,
not
they
as
can
cool.
never go back
No.
to that cabin where she deployed the bear spray. Like, it is toxic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it a flamethrower instead. Why? Oh, it's gonna look
Much like the masculinity in this film, also very toxic. Probably. You could say that about any movie. I don't know.
I loved that scene too, because like it turns the one guy into Two-Face, and he then spends the rest of the movie, he's pretty much fine. He's like, I'm kind of fading out a little towards the end, but he takes down John Barenthal in like their hand-to-hand fight. And I'm like, I'm sorry, this guy is extra crispy right now.
Mhm.
What are you talking about? And there's just so many things like that in this movie where one or two alone really wouldn't trigger me at all, but like
Yeah.
there's like a dozen of them where I'm just like, what is happening? Like everyone's making, after coming off of River Wild, where everybody is like very competent and acting like
and
you
making
would.
great decisions.
In this movie, I'm just like you said, John Barenthal. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like everybody is being so dumb so that action stuff can happen.
And the thing
And
with the
that
Taylor
was really bothering me.
in the Taylor Sheridan verse too, when it comes to John Barenthal, he's either the whole time I remember watching this, I was like, oh, he's either going to be the bad guy or he's going to die like ceremoniously, like as a hero.
Mhm.
You know, like there's
Yeah.
no middle ground.
No, I
Yeah,
did
and-
like. I mean, there was the bit towards the end that, like, that was the. There are moments in this movie. I did like the moment with him and his wife when they're on the tower, and it's like, like I said again, 9 months pregnant, she's climbed up that tower. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, but it's the fact they ride out the fire up there with the masks on. That is scary as shit. I mean, much like Angelina Jolie and the boy riding it out in the river.
Mhm.
It's like, it's a movie. I haven't seen it. I think it's based off the story that came from Arizona. It's a John Krasinski movie with Thanos and Miles Teller. Only
the
Brave
Hot
is-
Shots. I forget what the actual movie was called.
Yeah, I've heard
The
that's
Hot
quite.
Shots
I've heard that's
Firefighters.
very good. I've heard that. It's a
Hot Shots. They made a third Hot Shots movie.
It's the third of the Hot Shots
Yeah,
trilogy.
it tells that true story of like the 30 guys that got caught
Wow.
and only one
Yeah,
guy survived.
I remember that movie that nobody saw. Right?
Yeah, but I've heard
Yeah.
it's good. I want to see it. But yeah, in this movie, like, so it has its moments, and I do enjoy Nicholas Hoult and Aidan Gillen, and I like the sort of the five. The one thing I think that Will, you mentioned in the text thread as well, and it was something I did notice in the movie, is anyone that's ever been camping and has built a fire, I can't get within 10 feet of just a small fire. These
Yeah.
guys they are meters ahead
Oh yeah.
of this wall of fire. They're
It's
fine.
surrounded. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're running. It's that fire only hurts you if it touches you, like rule of movies, and it's like you're just watching how close they are to the forest fire, and it's like you would have already been barbecued. Like, it's ridiculous. I don't know. It's one of those things I can't get past.
We just lost Kristen. The thing is, like, I was watching Kristen for the last 10 seconds, and I go, she is either sitting so still right now with or Montana has basically lost internet at the moment.
There's a fire. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. We got Kristen back. Apparently,
Yeah. She was
like-
struck by lightning.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, and there's something else we've been talking about, with the pod is do we recommend movies? And I would say, like, Mending the Line, I'd say, is a movie that I think, if you are dealing with PTSD or trauma or things like that, then yeah, I'd say, watch it. It's not going to blow your mind. A River Runs Through It, I would say no. I think Those Who Wish Me Dead is, if you're just looking for something to watch on Saturday, bang it on.
Yeah, it's a fine film. I think a River Runs Through It. I will say, if you're from Montana and you haven't seen this movie, it seems like it would be like an indoctrination into Montana. Like when you get off the plane after your first visit to Montana, they just hand you the book and like a fishing pole. I don't know.
Yeah, the first thing you have to do is like tie a fly, and if you can't do it, you have to leave the state.
Yeah.
But of course, though, it's not about the best movie. It's about the Montana of it. Now, while Those Who Wish Me Dead it has a lot of outdoorsiness, it's clearly shot a lot on location. It was also shot mostly, I think, in New Mexico. And there were times when you sort of look at the mountains and you realize those aren't real mountains. You know, whereas
There's a lot of that. Yeah.
whereas you get into sort of like Mending the Line, you know, you go, oh, there are mountains just not being shot very well. And then in A River Runs Through It, you're like, oh man, those are real mountains as well. So I guess it's like we've got to find the Montana of it. Now I'm going to see whether you guys agree, but I think that Those Who Wish Me Dead elements, like, it's not very Montana. It's set in Montana, but it's not really talking about the lifestyle of Montana. It's not talking about people from Montana. It's just an action movie that happens there.
Right.
I'm willing.
Montana's not a character in that story.
Yeah, it's just, if anything's a character, it's the fire that's happening in Montana.
The very real fire, yes.
So I would say, I think for me, this is a two-horse race or a two-fish race in this particular case of Mending the Line and A River Runs Through It. So, Kristen, I'm going to start this with you. I just want straight up your opinion.
Yeah.
Like, which one do you, when you which one to you is the one that feels Montana to you?
Yeah, I think I had the most fun watching Those Who Wish Me Dead because it's, you know, it's kind of just the most shoot 'em up. That's kind of what I prefer. But there's little details in it that are just completely wrong, and all it would take is a quick Google Taylor. So it's frustrating. So I'm coming into this like majorly biased, and I am really interested in an unbiased opinion from you guys. But I had decided like long before doing this that you know, it's Mending the Line for me. Like that is just so familiar, but it's so personal. Like, you know, I've met people from that nonprofit, and you know, my coworker's husband wrote it. Like, it's deeply personal. So it's like it's up to you guys really to bring that unbiased view.
That's such a good point. I'm on the other side of the coin where, like, once you said Montana, I already had A River Runs Through It picked out in my head because of my history with the film. Like, so I'm looking at it from that subjective way. You know, like I just associate it.
And then for me, it's like, you know, I knew I was going to pick Those Who Wish Me Dead because like, I was like, oh, you know, it's going to be, because I wanted to talk about the 90s action-y movie of it all. And I kind of just like, you know, I was also interested, you know, sometimes I like to hear Will tear a movie apart, you know, sometimes it's like, you know, you've got good criticisms and stuff like that. So, but I will say it's interesting because I think you've hit the nail on the head, Kristen, is that Mending the Line, I think, is almost like a documentary. It's so very much about this place, and it's like you said, no, that's the real bait shop, and those are real people, and this is an actual thing, and that river
West
is right
Studi
over
is
there.
my neighbor.
Right. But like, yes, but then, you know, but then kind of what Ryan is saying is that A River Runs Through It is kind of like people's idea of Montana. You know what I mean? And I think that's the interesting thing here, is that are we going with what people think Montana is, or what Montana actually is? So Will weigh in on this one.
I was gonna say I think it goes to Mending the Line because there's so much from real life that's in it, even though, like we've been saying, it's not shot very well. But there's so much of real Montana in there, and River Runs Through It. What it might be like what people think of. It's also about a different time. It's not really representative of like what Montana, the people are like today. You know, the landscape's not really changed that much, but it's I think Mending the Line is probably much closer to like what the community is like. Yeah, I mean, it very much is. Kristen, you've been saying these are real organizations. So many like real locations and people were used in it. It feels much more authentic in that way, as opposed to River Runs Through It, which is a little bit more dated. And also, you don't really get to know the people that much. You know, you don't really get to know them on more than like a surface level in A River Runs Through It. So
yeah, A River Runs Through It, though, it's very much like
it's an idyllic point of view of Montana. Like,
yeah, well, it's very literal, as in like it goes, here is the rivers, and here are the trees, and here are the mountains and the beauty, and it really does make Montana like look beautiful.
Yeah.
I said it's like, you know, if the Montana sort of state like tourism commission, they probably love that movie. But you know, it's kind of like Kristen says, I can't believe it, but like, oh my God, we're leaning towards Mending the Line. But it's like, it's because it just felt the most actual real. Like, you know, like I said, shot like a TV show, you know, like I said, you know, just missed opportunities in my opinion, cinematography. But you can't argue with it. It's like, I think okay. So are we leaning, Ryan? Because you are, you know, the biggest defender of A River Runs Through It. Like I'm waiting for a compelling argument.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I can't compete with what you're saying about the film, because you're, like I said, you're not wrong, but I will always associate Montana with this movie in my heart, even though I've really never been, but that's just how I associate this movie with Montana. But yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying about Mending the Line. And I think it really does capture that very realistic way that how people are and people act, and how trauma can affect you versus, you know, how people portray themselves in A River Runs Through It, which is also set in like 1920, or, you know, so it's not as realistic. It's more idyllic, like your point of view.
Hang on. I may have a compelling argument, and we've done it before. Now
Compel me.
We did it just last week with Idahead when we were talking about, you know, when we had Smoke Signals and we had Napoleon Dynamite. And we did the same thing when we talked about New York, when we got North Carolina, but we had Dirty Dancing. Is cultural impact for a state. You know, much like Ryan's point is, when he thinks Montana, he thinks A River Runs Through It. When a lot of people think Montana, they think A River Runs Through It, because it's the bigger cultural impact of a movie. So does that cultural impact overweigh the literal kind of reality that we get from Mending the Line? Anybody what do you think?
No.
That's
Mending the Line it is.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think if you take a 30,000-foot view and take a step back as like Montana as a whole, it kind of captures, A River Runs Through It does capture more of that, the beauty and the mystery and the wilderness of this land, versus, you know, this very specific story of like military driven PTSD. You know, like that's just, I feel like that's just a smaller, albeit like it's just a smaller part of it. I think, you know, it's still very relevant, culturally relevant and important, but I don't know if it captures the state as a whole.
Yeah. Montana is big. Montana is way more than where I live. It is a huge state. It's hugely open. We're not even talking about like Glacier or like these other parts of the state that are so different to this geography that's around me. So, I mean, it is just a story of like this little town, basically, Mending the Line. So
it is very much kind of like, it's the, if you went to Bozeman, you're going to feel very familiar, you know, but at the same time, like if we went, you know, A River Runs Through It, I mean, there's no real reality to it apart from like the reality of the rivers and the fish. I mean, this is actually, it's a really, really tough one, because you know, like I said, the cultural impact of A River Runs Through It can't be argued, but, and yeah, and like I said, Mending the Line, I just wished, I mean, imagine like if you'd had a Roger Deakins shooting it. Just imagine if you'd had just someone with just like that beautiful eye, you know, I think could have made the movie just like, it had more of an impact. But I think it's gonna squeak through. And I think, like Kristen, I think like I'm really glad that you picked it. I'm really glad you picked the movies that you did. And of course, giving the insight of actually being from there. I think like the little thing, like, you know, the fact that Wes Studi actually lives there. I'm like, all right, okay, this movie is just basic.
He works at that bait shop.
yeah, he's not acting. They just, you know, just go to work and we'll follow you around.
Are you the guy from Mending the Line?
No. So yeah, okay. Look, is there any argument from anybody else? So it's gonna squeak through. It's gonna be like I'm going to give it credit. We like underdogs here in America. This was the underdog story, and for it to actually topple A River Runs Through It is a big deal. But if anyone else is going to argue, it's going to be official. All right, the movie to represent Montana officially here at the United States of a Movie podcast until we come back around for another season and maybe a movie can dethrone it is the 2022 drama Mending the Line. You can watch it on Netflix right now. Cinco Walls, Brian Cox, Patricia Heaton, Wes Studi, and others. And like I said, if you're someone that struggles with mental health or you are someone that's been in the armed services, you're actually going to find a lot in this movie that you appreciate. So there we go. We're putting the crown on it. I'd never heard of the movie. Kristen, this is 100% on you. Like I'm not putting it on you, but I'm saying it's...
No,
Your PTSD is on you.
Yeah, now you've done it. Yeah, usually it's on me, so that's...
But before we move on, we also, at this point, we like to talk about movies that we... the also rans. Now, in this particular case, Kristen, you did pick all of our movies, but we were like, looking into it. There are quite a few movies when it comes to Montana. One that Will and I we were just talking about was Open Range, which sort of like old school / new school Western, very kind of slow moving Kevin Costner movie, but it's dope. I remember really, really enjoying it. Very beautifully shot as well. Is Legends of the Fall also Montana? Like,
It might be.
I'm like, because
It's hard to say.
well, it's like, much like said, it's just a quick Google, Taylor.
Yep.
Yeah,
It says it right here. Yeah, it says
so
set.
I think
Lonesome
like,
Dove miniseries.
We could have also picked a River Wild, so that was shot in
it was
Montana.
shot in Montana, that's right. Power of the Dog, which came out a couple of years ago, very beautiful movie. Those set in Montana, actually mostly shot in Oregon. But like there are a bunch, lots of good Westerns as well when you get in, Hostiles as well. And it does have Steven Seagal's The Patriot. I'm tempted.
You're fine not. I've seen it. You're fine not watching it. You can safely pass on that. I was sad that I was talked out of it. I wanted to do Star Trek First Contact. I get it. It wasn't really filmed in Montana. Like the parts where they're on Earth is filmed in northern Arizona. I've been to the location. I know, but
they're just on a
it
ship
would have given
called
me a
the
chance to
USS
annoy
Montana.
Ryan.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. He's been trying to get me to watch a Star Trek for 50 plus episodes.
And it's gonna happen. We're gonna come back around to California. And we're not avoiding it.
We're gonna have a special episode or something. But yeah, no, actually, The Patriot, that is set in Montana as well. So there are some, like, honestly, I almost kind of wish we'd had Legends of the Fall and The River Runs Through It going head to head to kind of sort of show two sides of that coin. But with Legends of the Fall, Open Range, and a terrible movie like The Patriot, we've got some really interesting movies that I think we can watch when we revisit the state. And honestly, if we do that, Kristen, I'd love to have you back on. You've been a
sure. Yeah, I'll know more about Montana. I'll live here longer.
But yeah, it looks like, we talk about it often. There are some states that are pretty strong. Montana, you've got a lot of movies. I'm interested to come back around to it. Which means, okay, guys, we're going to finish off this episode, which means we've only got one state left to go. There's no reason.
Are you still going to flip the pen?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, magical pen. Actually, guys, it pointed directly at Utah. So there you go.
Oh,
the magic pen worked. So next week, we are going to be finishing off our first run through the country with the state of Utah. We may have a special guest for this one as well. I'll see if I can get her to come on board. It will be quite fun. But yeah, apart from that, thank you very much for joining us. Kristen, you've been a fantastic guest. As always, you can find videos that I do as That Englishman in Texas or as Oli Pettigrew on Facebook. You can find Will as Entitled Millennial. He's got a great TikTok, which will get into some of the old movies that he's got with his wall of Blu-rays that he has. It's a truly impressive collection. You can get the great designs that Ryan puts together. He redesigns movie posters, anything really that you can get into. And if you want to commission him, you can. As Rhino Digital, RYNO Digital. You can find him on Threadless, Etsy, everywhere else. But yes, finally, thank you very much for joining us. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, please do. We're slowly building our community, and it's fantastic. We love you guys reaching out to join and to basically tell us we're right or we're wrong. So come and join in some of the comments on YouTube. You can
Yeah.
find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. We have a Reddit page as well. It's always great to interact with you. But from me, from Ryan, from Will, and from Kristen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the United States of a Movie podcast. We'll see you next time.